Welcome to the Herstory Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi there. My name is Beth Gibbs. I am located on the eastern seaboard of the United States of America, and I am 78 years old, and this is my story. It's not working. That's what I said to myself back in 1980. Then I was 37 years old, divorced, a single parent with a full-time job in broadcasting, and 21 credits towards a master's degree in communications. So if you can picture that with the caption, middle class, African-American woman, feminist, humanist, tries to do it all and prove herself competent, capable, authentic, and enough to be a credit to the race. Now that is a heavy burden, and it weighed heavily on me. The cues I was getting from society and my family fed the directive to do it all. But inside, I felt crazy. Beneath my struggling and juggling, I was constipated and stressed. I developed TMJ, a condition where my jaws get tight and lock, and that was not fun. There just was not enough time, not enough energy, not enough of me to go around and to do all that was expected of me and all that I expected of myself. I felt like I was being ripped in half, and I needed to find an answer to the question, what does it mean to be enough, to do enough, and to have enough? Now, the have enough part of the question was first on my list because I've always thought that it's very hard, difficult, and maybe even impossible to imagine being concerned with doing enough or being enough until the basic needs of life have been met. You know, having water, food, clothing, safety, and shelter. So, how much of those things are enough? Well, I always knew that that would vary from person to person, but thankfully, having enough was not an issue for me. I was raised in a middle-class family in a small New England town in the eastern United States. And in any other place, we might have been considered working class because my dad was a janitor. My mom was a secretary. But because of the work ethic of my family in earlier generations, we owned our home free and clear with no mortgage. And sometimes you just know something in your bones. And that's how I felt about having enough. Now, I have never worried about having the newest, shiniest, latest anything. But as a kid and still as an adult, I do want things. As a kid, I wanted a chemistry set so I could make baking soda and vinegar bombs. As a young adult, I wanted the latest kitchen appliance, a new car, or that perfect little black dress, which I never found, by the way. But I never had that clutching feeling in my chest that if I didn't have or couldn't find the things I wanted, I'd be crushed. So I lived life with the feeling of having enough as an internal foundation, thankfully built by mom and my dad. Then the do enough question kicked in. And this was a tough one because I am a recovering perfectionist. And by the mid 1990s, I found myself in an unhappy second marriage. Marriage counseling failed when my husband, that's what I call former husband, refused to continue. So I spilled my sad story in run on sentences and heavy paragraphs to my no nonsense, down to earth social psychologist. And she listened. And then she told me in no uncertain terms that I was a perfectionist. And not only a perfectionist with codependency issues. And I would have to deal with that before we could even talk about the marriage. So you can imagine, my mouth dropped open. I didn't believe her. So I checked out a few books from the library and discovered that she was right. I realized that I was the one doing most of the judging and shooting on myself and others, and I had to admit it. I am a perfectionist, and I was closer to the edge of maladaptive perfectionism than I was comfortable with. And that brand of perfectionism with codependency issues was exhausting because it took many units of mental and physical energy to keep up that perfect persona. But what helped me move toward recovery was the wish to recover, the strength to take on the task, and very important, a sense of humor to help me through. Because I knew that if I didn't find a way out or find a way to laugh myself out, I would drown in an ocean of tears. And that would not be a good look for someone striving to be perfect in all things. So slowly I came to the realization that I needed to face life, work, and family from a place of balance and health, while at the same time maintaining a realistic personal standard of excellence that was balanced and had boundaries. It's a process, like everything else, and I'm still working on it. But once I was able to get some clarity around my issues and start to consciously address them, I discovered that the energetic intensity of my perfectionism decreased. And about the same time that I began to deal with doing enough, I came to grips with the being enough question. And I figured out that if I could recognize or create some kind of internal sense of contentment, not happiness, contentment, because there is a difference in my mind, a big important difference, I would be able to manage that existential angst and be enough, at least to myself. Now, some people find self-esteem and actualization in church, and some in the creative process, and some in sports. I found my helpful answer in my training as a yoga teacher. And what turned the tide for me was this kind of amazing psychological and philosophical model from a 3,000-year-old wisdom tradition from India. And it's called, in plain down to earth English, the 5 layers of self-awareness. Now, this model, in short, simply blew my mind because it proposes that we are much more than a mind interacting with a body. So understanding myself through 5 layers instead of 2, the more well-known mind-body model that we have in the West here, gave me a 360-degree view of what it means to be human. So I need to tell you what those 5 layers are in brief. Layer 1, physical, my body, my environment, me, my size, shape, gender, race, anatomy, physiology, my home, and the environment, my home and the earth that we all live on. Layer 2, energetic, my breath and my energy levels. And I needed to know what those were, to tune into them, along with the understanding of how they work together to animate me and help me navigate all that life brings, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. Layer 3, mind, my thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. It's how I think, what I think about, what I believe, and how I experience and express myself. Fourth layer, intuitive wisdom. This is my ability to observe and understand the how and the why I got to where I am now, and how I can consciously make or consciously not make wise choices. And if choices and changes are not available to me for some reason, then how can I find some kind of peace of mind and acceptance for what is? Layer 5, that's bliss. This is a connection to something larger than myself. And for anyone, it could be spiritual, religious, a deep connection to a healthy passion, or to the natural world. For me, it was finding positive ways to express myself creatively. And all this came after the age of 50. It's important to know. And because mental pictures and stories help me with understanding big ideas, I created an analogy so I could visualize this in my head. And I call it my shit sugar wheel. So I imagine my life as a wheel that steadily turns. And half of the rim is coated with sugar. And that's everything that makes me happy, excited, upbeat, and feeling good, the ups. The other half is coated with, shit. And it's everything that leaves me feeling scared and empty and sad and suffering, what I call and what everybody calls the downs. And since the wheel of my life is constantly turning, I figured out that if I stayed on that rim, I would have no choice but to go round and round and round from sugar to shit and back again over and over and over. So my wheel has 5 spokes, the 5 layers of self-awareness. And that hub of the wheel is where I could find that contentment I was seeking. And the trick to use the spokes wisely, to move my thinking and my consciousness from the rim to the hub, where there I would be able to watch that wheel go round and round, but with a little bit of conscious detachment, not apathy, detachment, the ability to witness and watch. Then I would be able to make those better decisions on how to respond, not to react with fear or resistance or just aversion and wanting to run away, but to respond with a certain amount of self-awareness and resilience and practicality for what I was facing. And this way, the highs, because we all have highs, they're still wonderful. And the lows are still painful. But from the hub of the wheel, looking out with that little bit of detachment, I know that both are temporary. So in this way, I learned to be concerned, but not consumed by them. And with this level of self-awareness operating 24/7, I have found the balance and contentment I was looking for. Well, most of the time, it's a process. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, but we can begin this at any age of life. So over time, I enlightened up a few degrees. I got that I could not do it all without risking my health and my sanity. I gave up my business suits and my heels, along with several committee and board positions, that whole corporate thing. And I watched external validation from a number of people and organizations just simply melt away like cold butter on a hot summer sidewalk. Did I need that validation anymore? Question I asked myself. Could I be a credit to the human race on my own terms and in my own voice? And the answer I came to was hell yes. So when I look back, I realized that it took 37 years for the threads of external directives, striving, and feeling not enough and not doing enough to tie themselves into knots big enough for me to feel and to disrupt my life. So does it matter? that it took another 41 years to untie those knots and let the threads dissolve? Nope. Because in the end, the only thing that matters is that I have found the discipline to work through those knots moment by moment, bit by bit, and thread by thread. And today, I'm a lot better at managing stress. I have gotten pretty resilient. I haven't been constipated in years. And my TMJ bite plate sits unused on the top shelf of the medicine cabinet, except sometimes when, because we all have those times when things are really stressful, I might need to put that in for a few nights. At least that's what my dentist says. So I follow her orders. And I rejoice that in the fact that underneath the African, underneath the American, and underneath the woman slash feminist slash humanist is a being who can occasionally and surprisingly be here now. And in those moments, I can rest amidst the chaos and be present in my life with its problems and joys. I'm competent, capable, authentic, and that is enough, my friends.
What an incredible story. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
You know, just listening to you speak, you sound like one of those women who figured it out and has it together. A lot
Most of the time.
we are struggling to find that balance, to find that center, that hub that we found with the five spokes.
Yes.
Now, tell us the difference between happiness and contentment in your definition.
In my definition, I think of happiness is momentary excitement. A check comes in the mail. You won a contest. You wrote a book and an agent says, I'll buy it. They say, yes. But that can be short-lived, because in the next moment you can get a phone call from a member of your family that there's a crisis, or you can be diagnosed with an illness, or something terrible could happen. You could find yourself in the middle of a war or find yourself attacked. And in order to get through those other things that happen in life, contentment lasts a little bit longer. It's more a feeling a feeling of resilience and leveling, basically being able to look at the highs and the lows from the hub of the wheel with that little bit of detachment. So it doesn't mean you don't get excited when something wonderful happens. You do. And it doesn't mean you don't feel horrible when something bad happens, because you are. But the key is to use that intuitive witness, that ability to watch things from that hub that kind of takes the edge off a little bit and allows you to say, okay, things are not great right now, but I can find an inner peace, an inner contentment. And when the happiness, when the excitement comes along, fine, I will enjoy that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I have to be able to manage my life on things that are a little more level instead of up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I need to find that middle ground.
Oh, I love it. I'm at that point where I'm trying to find that level. You know, my life has been a bit of a roller coaster ride over the last 10 to 15 years. So if there is a woman who is listening to us right now, she's struggling. If you could go back to the younger you, that young woman who was just on that treadmill, doing, giving, going nonstop. If you could go back and give yourself 3 pieces of advice based on what life has taught you, what would that be?
First thing I would do is understand, though, that model that I learned during my yoga training. And of course, when I learned it, it was all in Sanskrit and deep philosophical language. And I needed to be able to share that information with my yoga students in plain English, like I would tell my own younger self. So that's why I wrote my book, Enlighten Up, Finding Clarity, Contentment, and Resilience in a Complicated World, in plain English. So I could understand it and give that to my younger self and give that to my students. So that would be first. Second, I would find some kind of way to exercise, whether you're completely able, whether you're sitting in a wheelchair, there's some kind of exercise you can do. And when you can't physically do it, you can visualize it in your mind. A guy named Matthew Sanford was in an automobile accident at age of 11, paraplegic. He is now a yoga teacher because he figured out how to use visualization to help him move whatever parts of his body that he could move. And the third thing I would recommend is find a creative outlet, whether it's writing, knitting, crafting, something, because we all have a creative spark. We need to find a way to get that out because that can get you through a lot of tough times. Did you say 3 pieces or 4 pieces?
3 pieces. No, you are right on the button. That is absolutely wonderful. And something does happen when you move physically in terms of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're doing craft, I crochet, I knit, I almost space out and don't think when I'm doing that.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
only time I can actually meditate is when I'm walking. Some people need to
Yes.
still to meditate. I need to walk. I need to walk a distance until I hear my heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Then I really tune in and go inward. So
Exactly.
meditation
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be you sitting
No,
still.
no. And what I've learned is there are only 2 rules for meditation. And I really tell this to my students. You want to have your back comfortably straight. So that means you could lie down in bed and meditate. As long as your back is comfortably straight and you're able to remain awake and aware, whatever you're doing, you can meditate while you're washing dishes. So walking meditation is a definite thing. Absolutely.
That is fantastic. Now, let me take you to your older self.
Mm-hmm.
You're now 120 years old. And the way you're going to live to 140, especially with all this yoga.
Uh-huh.
You could teleport into the future
Mm-hmm.
and have a conversation with the older you. You're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your dogs, your cats, whatever it's going to be. And you could talk to this wise woman who has led you to that point.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to her based on how you've lived your life?
The first thing I would say is thank you. I am grateful to have been your companion on this amazing ride through life. And so I'd say thank you for that. I would also say, and this takes a little bit longer, but I would also thank her for the way in which she has aged, even with the gray hair and the wrinkles, because that doesn't necessarily change what's going on inside. So I would thank her for making the distinction between what's going on the outside and what's going on the inside. And the third thing I would say to her is make sure that you have your mind resting in the hub of that wheel when you transition off this planet for the last time. Just go peacefully. That's what I would say.
I love it. I love asking that question because a lot of women don't realize that we are born with all the wisdom we need. We have all the answers to all of our problems. And sometimes I go into meditation and I tune into the future me and I ask her, what is our next step?
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do next?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it comes through my dreams, these little knowings, these little cryptic messages. Or I will bump into someone the next day and I'm talking about what I'm struggling with, and they'll say something, and there's a chain of events that happens with that.
Yes.
So we have all the answers, ladies. You have everything you need to solve every problem in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's go now to your spirit of giving.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to give back in your life, in your business?
Mm-hmm. I do 2 things. During the month of December, which in the United States is Christmas, I make a list of organizations that I choose to support, and I write generous checks to them. Most of those organizations have to do with making sure people are fed, have those basic things in life, places and organizations that help shelter people, feed people, and keep people safe. Organizations that are aligned with the idea and the concept of raising healthy, resilient children, because that's very important to me. So I do that in December. And when I retired from my last paid job, I decided to set up a foundation at our local Foundation for Public Giving, a donor advised fund, because I wanted to find ways to do that a little more frequently. So I set up this donor advised fund to honor my parents. It's called the Garnett Gibbs Family Fund. And depending upon how the market's doing, I will make a regular contribution, a good chunk of a contribution to an organization in my area that I feel is doing something along the lines of healthy choices. And so for right now, I'm supporting a summer yoga program for inner city kids who right now are feeling a lot of stress because of all the not being in school. And it's so interesting because the kids will feed back their experiences, and they will say things like, when I'm in yoga club, I feel like I'm part of the universe, or this is the only place where I can feel and relax and be myself because it's not comfortable sometimes to be at home. So I know that that's an important service. And I know that the kids are learning they're learning specific techniques on how they can energize themselves when they need to have more energy, how they can relax and calm themselves when they're angry, upset, or anxious, how they learn to cooperate because they did not understand the meaning of that word when we got started, and then how they can focus so that when they're in school and doing schoolwork, they get a little more focus and concentration on how to tune into what they're doing in the moment. So those are the ways that I'm giving back.
Fantastic. Was there anything I should have asked you and I didn't?
Well, let me see. You could have asked me about my 2 books. The first book I self-published is called Ogie Bogie, the Elephant Yogi, and it is based on the curriculum that I developed for that summer camp program for kids. And that's been out. It's self-published, so it's okay. It's going along, but I'm anxious to get it into libraries and more school libraries in particular. And then my second book, which came out last year in 2021, is that Enlighten Up, Finding Clarity, Contentment, and Resilience in a Complicated World. And I have this inner stand-up comic that's trying to get out. So I definitely use a lot of humor to get those messages about the 5 layers across and to provide specific instructions that you can take into your daily life. No yoga mat is needed. No spandex tights are needed. Just simple, accessible, practical, down-to-earth ways that you can take that concept into your life. Those things are very important to me. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I take it people can contact you through your website?
Yes, absolutely. They can sign up for my newsletter, and if they do, they can download 2 tracks of a relaxation tape as a thank you for signing up. And I only send it out 6 times a year. I don't want to slam anybody's or cram anybody's email box with a lot of stuff. So it comes out 6 times a year. And then there's a lot of stuff on my website that they can read. I've been doing blogs. I've got a blog that I've been doing since 2019. So there's a lot of stuff to read there too as well.
Fantastic. Ms. Beth, thank you so much for coming online and gracing us with your amazing presence today. Your energy is infectious. I feel energized just listening to you speak.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Herstory movement is attracting some phenomenal women who are really shining a light on how we should live, how we should be, how we should honor ourselves and find that contentment and happiness. So thank you for being online and listening to this podcast. Come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Ms. Beth, thank you again for this interview.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Enjoyed it tremendously.
Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Herstory Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Herstory Circle podcast for more updates, and join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.